Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We are excited to have our next Sports Tech Central webinar here to really give you an insider's perspective of what it's like as a founder to have gone through our inaugural Sports Tech Accelerator, and also the vantage point of a sports partner who is really an advisor and guide throughout that 12-week program. I think certainly more of like a customer advisor to really help and guide and make sure that we were activating pilots and proof of concepts and choosing startups that are really relevant to our business. So we're going to do a little bit of a tour down memory lane, talk about our selections process and why we chose you, Brennon, as a founder that we saw such potential in the technology and why it made a strategic fit for the business. And Sam will cover that too on that perspective of why and how you helped Brennon in very tangible ways throughout the program. But before I kick off and give off full intros, I would love to ask, so Sam, can you give us your best bad seat story?
Yeah, so I can give you one that ended up with a good ending to it. So grew up in Boston and went to my favorite ballpark as a kid, Fenway Park. And as we know, there are some unique setups for seats in that ballpark. And I found myself somewhat wedged into a pole down the third base line. The happy ending to that story was, even though at times it was tough for 7 or 8 year old me to actually see what was happening around home plate, somebody hit a foul ball that landed in the seats next to me, and the very nice couple next to me decided the young next to them deserved a foul ball. So I could not tell you to this day who hit it, but it is still one of my favorite memories from a sports game growing up, even though the seat might have been a little bit obstructed.
Less than ideal. Although, so for anyone joining us that doesn't know, Sam Ebb is our Vice President of Business Strategy and Analytics for Spectacor, which includes a whole portfolio, including the Wells Fargo Center. So the probability, I'm sure, as somebody who lives and breathes numbers and analytics, there's a pretty low probability that you would go to a ballpark and walk away with a ball. So yeah, very cool story. Nice. And then Brennon, let me toss it over to you, our founder and CEO of Dibz.
Yeah,
you must
sure.
have a few.
I have a few, but I'll tell you the one that kind of like got me thinking about Dibz in the first place. It was having seats, but not actually being able to get into the event. But it's true. Somebody sent me seats, and through the combination of trying to download them, access them, use them, what happened basically was I missed the, and this was actually a theater event, and the doors closed on me, and I had to wait for a good part to get in when there was a break. So yes, horrible story, because I actually had the tickets, but I actually couldn't access the event. So that's one of my horrible ones. Yeah.
So I'm going to venture a guess, and I would love for you to share a little bit more about Dibz, but that's very much the origin story, right? There's got to be a ticketing experience that is much more seamless. So tell us a little bit about what you're building and how you've been working with sports teams already.
Yeah, sure. So just for anybody out there, Dibz is a seat upgrade service that's done through text messaging. So because of the app, sometimes we tried to say, well, what's an easier way to get a person into a better seat? And maybe there's a workaround the app that exists. And there's a lot of people out there that are not familiar with apps or technology in general. So how do we give them that ability to do this through text messaging? And that's kind of like that's how Dibz was born, to be honest. And what we started to do was we started to connect a lot of dots. We know the sports world is very different. It's not linear. There's a lot of different paths to success. But how do you bring in the key stakeholders? How do you get past the gatekeepers? How do you show them a new service offering that they're not familiar with? And what it took was a lot of convincing. But in the case for Comcast SportsTech, they introduced us to the right people. And that was key in getting to that next step. So yes, you have a good product, but you need to talk to the key stakeholders, and then you can really move the dial. But until you have that level of engagement, it's really hard. And that's one of the big benefits that has been happened since we got into the accelerator. Another big thing is obviously working with the teams, and we're working with the actual teams right now, you get the reality of the situation. It's what you think the product is going to work like and what it actually is going to work like. And I think that's been the real learning, and we're still learning on a day-to-day basis how to improve our process. So very cool that we got into the accelerator, and very cool that we've had a lot of learning since, and obviously into the future as well.
Well, I mean, that's a perfect segue, because Sam, would love for you to share perspective as being a sports partner advisor in the process. But before we go into that, we certainly, for Comcast, our connections to sports run deep. We have, NBC Sports and Sky Sports and Golf Channel, but we also have Spectacor. And I think a lot of people might immediately think of the Flyers or Gritty, but there's so much just in the portfolio of Spectacor. So can you give a little sense of that and your role within the company?
Yeah, so Comcast Spectacor as a whole, we have the Wells Fargo Center and the Flyers, as well as the Philadelphia Wings, which are a indoor lacrosse NLL team that plays here out of the Wells Fargo Center. We also have the Flyers training facility over in Voorhees, New Jersey, and then the Maine Mariners, which are an ECHL team that we work with up in Portland, Maine. Beyond that, there is a Spectacor gaming side of the operations that runs an esports team and a couple other investments in the e-gaming space. For me, my focus is really on the core Wells Fargo Center operations, as well as the Mariners. So supporting the Flyers, the Wings, the Mariners, the Wells Fargo Center, and really serving in many ways as an internal consultant for our business, working to find ways to deliver both on our promises to our fans and making sure we're finding the most innovative solutions to deliver the experience that everyone wants, but also making sure we have the data and the technology in the back end to support everything we want to do and show how we're creating this seamless experience, show the business case behind it, and make sure it makes sense from all perspectives.
Love that. So let's do that, travel back down memory lane. So in the selections process, Sam, you are a very strong advocate for Brennon as a founder, for Dibz as a unique fan engagement experience, the simplicity of it. But we talked about, some of the concerns with COVID. Would we be able to really test and pilot things? But talk about what were some of the things in particular with Brennon as a founder and the experience that they're building that had you say, yeah, there's a business case for us here.
Yeah, I think one of the things we know, and this is where I get to both put my own fan hat on from attending games myself, but also look at what I hear from our fans. People are looking for flexibility. Someone who buys season tickets in the other upper level may have that one special game a year where they want to go see their favorite team. They want to bring a family member. They want to, for whatever reason, get closer to the action. And it's something I've seen. It's something we've heard from our fans. It's something that people have started to scratch the surface of how to solve, and seeing Brennon and the idea he had, the energy brought to it, this was, I think, a really good opportunity to say, yes, this is a real problem that we need to solve in the industry. And we let's work together to figure out the best way to attack it and the best way to, again, bring the fans what we hear they want, what we hear they need.
So Brennon, I'd love for you to talk about some of those key fan learnings and insights that you gained from Sam, because obviously you're tackling this from the perspective of what's a solution to that seamless fan flexibility and experience. What were some of the key gems of insights that you got from Sam?
Yeah. So I think we were like battling two things on our journey. One was, how do you bring this solution with text messaging to the world in venues? And how do you do it during COVID, right? And one of the biggest things that, right out of the gate was we realized that, certain venues have limitations of capacity of seating. So those are some things that we had to get around. But I think in the end of the day, our value was still true. People want that upgrade regardless. Sure, you have a limited capacity, but maybe there's other things we can do as an upgrade. So those were like conversations that we had. It's like, maybe it's not a seat upgrade, maybe it's a drink or a concessions upgrade or something like that. And it kind of like forced, in a way it was good, because it forced us to open up a slew of menu offerings that we now offer that help with the fan experience. So maybe not with seats. And it's kind of ironic that sometimes a place might be sold out. So there are no seats to sell or upgrade. But there are other things that people want. And how do you address those? So in the end of the day, there's always an upgrade. There's always something to engage with the fans and prove their experience. And so we started to tackle it on different ends. But those are some of the big learnings we gained from even the conversations with Sam in the early days.
So I do recall a scramble and an ask of Sam. It was a kind of a sudden thing, which was when we announced our 10 cohort, there was an immediate phone call that you received from Orlando Magic, wanting to learn more. And Sam, you were able to just quickly go in there and really set him up for success in terms of the ticketing platform they're on and questions to expect. Can you talk a little bit more about that experience from your perspective, Sam? And then Brennon would love to have you add on.
Yeah, I think as a team, I was familiar with a lot of what they had been doing. They are an innovative user of some of the platforms that have been out there, and some of those changed or stopped existing in some cases in COVID. So it's something that I had been in touch with some of the folks on that side. We kind of worked together as an industry to figure out what some of those best practices are. So being able to sit back from my side and say, all right, I know what we want. I know what we've seen them do and what we've seen them actualize, and the hole that's created in kind of what they'll have to offer to fulfill the promise they've made to fans and the delivery they've had for their fans over the past couple of years. So we were able to sit down and walk through, here are some of the steps that we think are going to come out of this conversation. Here's some of the things that I want to demo. Here's some of the things that I want to get their hands on, wrap their heads around, and then left it in Brennon's very capable hands to really make that come to life.
Yes. And I can add on. So one thing that was really interesting upon the, the cohort starting is that this is reality. You're going to be talking to some very important people, and they will reach out to you. I mean, we were a little bit floored when we had major sports teams reach out, and how do you handle that conversation, right? It's all of a sudden there's a reality where everything you're building, yes, we want to get to trials and we want to get to these POCs, but they're right in front of you. How do you deal with it? There's a lot of things you have to know. How does the business run? What's the connection? How does seat inventory work? How do personal seat licenses work? How do subscriptions work? There's so much. So what was good is that we had Sam and Ilka in our corner, and they helped us talk through these. And it's almost like we'd step away and we'd come back to those conversations with understanding where they were coming from. So I guess all that knowledge gained from the inside was invaluable, and it helped us move the dial a lot faster than we would have if we just went it by ourselves.
Well, Brennon, you mentioned the importance of access. It's not an easy industry to break into. And while there were some COVID restrictions, there were enough fans already at the Flyers games that didn't afford the opportunity to do a pilot there. But Sam was able to open up some doors for you elsewhere. Can you talk through a few of those?
Sure. Yeah. So I think once again, it is hard to have that initial breakthrough, but once that breakthrough happens, and it happens usually through connections, right? And Sam, was gracious enough to hook us up with Spectre Venue Management, who has a lot of venues. I mean, I still remember our first conversation with them. Towards the end of the meeting, it was like, "Hey, the guys are standing behind you. What do you need?" I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, let's take 3 venues. All right, give me a week, and I will get you 3 venues." And they stuck to their words, and they gave us 3 venues to actually work in. And then, what else do you need? Oh, well, there's the gatekeeper. There's Paciolan. Okay, well, I'll put you with somebody at Paciolan, and these connections. They happened so fast that it was like a good problem to have, but it definitely, I think it only comes from this world where people can vouch for you, and then then all of a sudden other people just hear about you because you're already in that world. So we, obviously we're floored by the amount of connections we made with all the gatekeepers and the teams and the leagues, and it just snowballed from there. So now everybody's starting to connect those dots of how we come into that ecosystem.
Love it. And then, so Sam, obviously you are opening up your Rolodex, right? So you have to have a sense of confidence that Brennon was up for the task, that you could give him the insights he needed to run with that opportunity because you're extending your network. Can you talk a little bit more about what gives you that level of confidence and what some of that, business analysis, definitely, but a little bit of that gut that says, okay, we're ready to experiment here?
I mean, I think for any of these any innovation, any startup working in a field, you want to look at, is the problem real? And for the case of Dibz, the problem is very real. Are there a lot of options in space for this problem? Right now, no. There aren't many players out there solving this problem or really trying to address it in a unique and innovative way. And then is there somebody behind the team who can push it forward, who has the energy to bring it, who will come and deliver for the team? And for Dibz, they deliver across all three of those. So for us, it's a light ask of us in some way of, we have something that solves a real problem for people. And if it can solve a real problem and we can make the introductions and help Brennon and team continue to get the proof points and continue to learn, because for any time you implement something the first time, you'll learn something for the second time and the third time, and the fourth time, and the fifth time. And by the time you're looking at, to Brennon's point, spreading across the sports industry, because that's something that a lot of these companies do. They'll have clients across all of the professional leagues and many of the minor leagues as well. You have that confidence of, all right, you have the proof points, you have the delivery, you have the examples, you have the case studies, say, this is exactly how it works. This is the model. We'll hold your hand through every step of the process. So starting with solving a real problem with a solution that isn't out there today, that's a big step. And then having the faith in the company and the team behind it.
So it's interesting because you said it best, right? There's a problem, and then it is, do you have the right product that fits to address that problem in a seamless way? But there was also a very interesting dynamic that occurred in the marketplace itself, where the big behemoth experience in the marketplace, they found themselves overextended. They ran out of runway and they had to shut their business down at the end of 2020. It was also one of the reasons, frankly, Brennon, where we're like, man, with that kind of competition, how are you unique and different enough in what you're building? So Sam, I would love for you to talk about what that impact was in the marketplace as a whole, and why you see Dibz as uniquely fitting that need now.
Yeah, I think to the point you just made, the realities of the last 18 months changed the course of companies that support the sports entertainment space. And it did impact some of the companies that were already in the upgrade space. And it created a big hole where a lot of teams that were relying on a single company had a gap to fill. And candidly, there really weren't that many options to go out and fill it. So that's where having the opportunity to step into that. And as Brennon said, it came quickly. It came from all sides. It really created this unique opportunity to come in and say, hey, we've got a new solution. We can disrupt where things were. And there's this huge opportunity right now to break into that market and get the market penetration that you're looking for.
Yeah, and I can add to that. So with the Experience app, kind of like COVID changed the landscape. Okay, let's be honest. They created a lot of unknowns, and those unknowns maybe put the industry had a big question mark. What does this look like going forward? But I think that was also met with, what can we do going forward as well? So it wasn't business as usual. How do you bring in new players? How do you look at innovation? Because this is a new world we're going to live in. And believe it or not, it helped us, because those unknowns were like, okay, we don't know everything about what you do because you're new and innovative, but we can start to connect those dots. And I think that's what really happened. The teams, the leagues, we just kind of we brought it to the table, and it was always like, okay, well, I can see this working in this way. And so we're like, hey, you guys pick and choose. We're going to be here. We have our core offering. You tell us how you want to use us in your environment. And that's kind of like, we let them connect the dots, and then they're like, okay, well, can you do this? And that's what leads to a trial. And that's how we've been really gaining a lot of ground since.
Well, you're actually filling two different unique use cases, one with a sports team and one with a university. Can you spend a little time sharing what you can, since you're right in the midst of those proof of concepts? Sure.
So I guess the good part is, it's good to see that what we do is not just applicable to pro sports, but it's also college ball and you have to look at it this way. Yes, we upgrade seats, but sometimes it's not an upgrade that's needed. It's more like, well, you're providing information through text messaging. Maybe there's other things we can do with that. And one of the universities in particular, I can't mention the name right now, but one of the universities reached out and they said, look, we have a problem we need to solve through text. You obviously are, you know this world. Can you provide the solution that we have a problem to? And we quickly said, you know what? Yes, absolutely. So we retooled a little bit, and all of a sudden we had a new service offering that's applicable to every college ball university out there, and also other sports within college. In the end of the day, it's all about moving people into seats or from other seats into other seats. So I think, yes, that came about. And obviously now we have this new path that seems to be very lucrative. And we're like, okay, we're going to go in that direction. On the pro sports end, we had a path to market, and that path was like, how do you prove this in for instance, let's say baseball. We know there's a lot of seat inventory, that low hanging fruit. Let's prove it there. And let's show them what we can do in the simplest of ways. And so we designed a system to work, and we're currently right now doing that pilot. And it's kind of like lots of unknowns. We have an idea of how we're going to execute. We've told them this is what's going to happen at the end of this pilot. But the fact that we're actually in the doors doing a live event at an MLB game is huge. And for us, once again, they're working with us. It's not like, hey, look, we expect all these things. They're like, look, we're going to set the bar. We're going to tell you exactly what we're going to deliver. And it's going to be that relationship that where you get to learn what we do, we get to learn what you do. And then we can come up with more offerings with this relationship as we start to meet those kind of like milestones. But yes, just so that we know ours was applicable in pro sports and also in I guess, universities as well. So, and we're curious to see the other verticals that come out of this as well.
Absolutely. So Sam, let's go back and look at this through the lens of fans and wanting that flexibility. To your point, yeah, certainly it could be getting a better seat, but you look at the numbers, you see what the fan behavior is and the signals that you're seeing. What are some of the other use cases of text messaging as a platform just to communicate with fans in the space?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different angles. So the first is for years we did mail and we did email and phone calls. And now, especially for the younger generation of fans, text message is the easiest way to reach them. It's convenient, it's right on the phone, it goes directly back and forth, there's not a lag time. So it allows people to engage with platforms in a way they're comfortable with, in a way they do on an everyday basis. And then I think the other side, pivoting from kind of just the tech solution side of it to the what else can it do, is people are looking for flexibility. Everywhere in everyone's life today, there's increasing flexibility. There's increasing ways to create a seamless experience. And people who are buying sports tickets are looking for the exact same thing. They're looking for different areas. Or if they buy season tickets in one spot, they want the ability to get that one special game, or to get a couple special games, or to expand from their 2 seats to 4 seats for a game so they can bring some friends. So there's the continued expansion of the offering. And this is something we spend a lot of time talking about with Brennon, of where do you start from day one and these pilots, and then what does the roadmap look like over the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, couple of years of continuing to grow that share of mind, share of voice with the fan, to say, all right, we can provide even more to you. We can provide this value. Let's show you the first way we can do it, and then keep adding on top of that and expanding beyond that, because there are so many opportunities to find that way to create this flexibility that fans really do want.
Yeah, and just to add quickly to that, in the end of the day, like at Dibz, we're providing information, right? We're really just, whether it's a seat upgrade or concessions, merchandise, parking, whatever it is, or maybe even just something about information as to how to have a better, like how do you get to your seat faster or something. In the end of the day, we're providing information. And I keep going back to the, it may not be seats, but there's something that the venue or the organization's having a problem with. And if we can solve it through a simple text message and relaying that information, then they have a better fan experience, and then we've done our job. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, so you got a lot of input from Sam, but you got a lot of input throughout the program in talking with other sports teams and organizations, and could have easily gotten into that overextending yourself element as well if you didn't learn to focus. So going back to Sam's point on really what are the things on the roadmap that give you the biggest wins? what were some of the ways that you took in all of that mentorship, the guidance, the advice, but stayed true to the conviction of simplicity to build out the roadmap?
Yeah, I'll say it's very easy to veer off the path. It is very easy because you have to remember, when people reach out to you, they look at your solution and what your solution can do for their problem. It's not necessarily the problem that you had in mind, but they're seeing a use case for it. And that's one of the first things, because you have to do the math and you have to kind of like ask yourself, are we solving it for this one entity or the entity at large? Are we like, what are we trying to do? And I think what's cool about it, and we've been approached with some random things in conversations, and it's about once again staying true to your guns, because we knew, look, in the end of the day, it's like we know there's a whole bunch of people out there that are not tech focused, who may not even know how to download an app or have Wi-Fi problems or connectivity issues. We know that exists, so we're just trying to say, what can we do for these people? Okay, we know we can still offer them things through this method we've designed, but let's stay to our guns. Let's stay true to our guns, and let's show the venues, the leagues, and that hey, there's this works. Here's the proof, and that's what these trials are for. We're going to bring proof that this is something where a whole part of the market will want to use and adopt. And in the end of the day, it's not about us. It's about the conversion. It's about we're helping them gain a better experience. And regardless of what way they've come, you're going to make that fan happy, and they're going to do more within that ecosystem. So it was always about, yes, we can do endless amounts of things, but we're going to focus on that first experience. They're going to be like, I'm going to keep on using this because it made my life easier. And hopefully we can win hearts in that way first.
So Sam, I would love from your perspective, because you actually championed 2 teams. So you were a sports partner advisor to 2 teams within our cohort. And I think, again, it speaks to the unique portfolio of assets to really test and pilot things and see what's a real strategic fit for the business. So for some in the audience who are founders who are looking to innovate in the sports technology space, what are some of the real acute needs, the gaps, the innovation that you would like to see coming out of the entrepreneurial spirit out there?
Yeah, I think the ability to create flexible experiences for ticket buyers is a big one. I think there are future innovations around the broadcast. Now, that doesn't necessarily touch the day-to-day of a stadium operator, but it does touch our end fans, and people are looking for streaming and integration and personalization. Then I think the third area is personalization of the experience across your full span of interaction with the team, whether you're watching at home and you're interacting with team content, to coming to the stadium, to buying your concessions and merchandise, and having that experience where so many other places is already tailored to you, and doing the exact same thing within the venue. And I think there's a lot of interesting and unique opportunities to figure out different ways to set up that personalization to allow people to customize their experience and allow teams and operators and leagues to deliver on that promise.
Well, it's a perfect segue into what's now filling up to be a few questions here from our audience. So this is a great one from Samir Said. He's the CEO of Aya. I might not be pronouncing that correctly, but love this question. Were there any challenges or rewarding moments during your pilot experience with NBC companies, Brennon, that really stand out?
I think, okay, so NBC companies. Obviously we were on the ticketing end, so we dealt more with the leagues and the teams. But I will say that in this ecosystem, everybody knows everybody. So you'd be surprised how people that you wouldn't think would know of you would just magically know of you, and they know who you're connected to. And I think that it's not NBC Sports like particularly, but I would say that it was nice to be in the room and have people talk about you. But yeah, those were my. I guess we were so focused on the build, we still have a lot of connections to make. Let's put it that way.
That is true. How about challenges though? Because we put you through a ReRisk program as well. So in that, in that 12-week program, it's not just activating those pilots and proving out the technology to be able to operate at a scale that our company runs. But we're also putting you through the rigors of, curriculum around marketing, go-to-market analysis, raising funds, all of those things. How did you manage all that?
Oh, okay. So yes, it's a lot of information, but a lot of good information. And especially when you're coming from not having that sort of inside scoop, it can be overwhelming. I think what you need to do is that you have to absorb, you have to ask questions. The way to get around those sorts of challenges are just to lean on the cohort, all the resources, the advisors, the mentors. That's what we did. I mean, we used every connection possible because we had a lot to learn. So we used the whole cohort as this university degree that we came out of with just, my God, look at this, look at the amount we learned. Obviously my team would help with that. We had any questions, we'd reach out. Don't feel shy about reaching out to people because they're learning you and you're learning them. It's just absorb as much as you can, and then you start to build a path forward. And then once you get out of the cohort, once again, reach out to those same people and keep using these contacts in this network, because that's what propels you in the end of the day.
Absolutely. And then Sam, you had a lot of exposure to not just the teams that you were a sports partner advisor with, but in open office hours and sharing more about Spectacor. Can you talk about what stood out for you in terms of the qualities, the character, the drive, the grit in founders that really stood out for you that you would share as, if you want to work with a company like us, understand our world?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that stood out is how far all the companies came over the period of time they were working with the accelerator. And I think particularly with Dibz and with the other company I worked with, they had such interesting and flexible technology platforms that a lot of people outside almost use them as a Rorschach test of, hey, this will solve my problem. This will solve 1,000 different problems. And seeing how they were able to balance all of those competing interests and say, all right, this is our focus for now. This is our focus for next. This is our focus for later down the line, and work with them through the balances of the prioritization. And I think really seeing the innovative minds behind these companies, and that's what you have to do to come up with a startup that will crack into the space and will be successful, is come up with something unique and different. And watching all of these different companies go through that process and say, all right, here are the biggest challenges we're struggling with, and here are the ways we're thinking through each one of those steps, and then getting to what ended up being, I think, really good solutions as they went through the course of the program.
Yeah, I recall in one of the open office hours, a completely different company with AI and computer vision technology suddenly be able to say, and back to your point around innovating within the broadcast space, you have a ton of sponsors physically within the space who are looking for a return on that sponsorship, and the ability to really track how often are they showing up on the broadcast, opened up some interesting opportunities for you there. Can you talk about some of the other areas that really impact the P&L?
Yeah, and I think that part is really important for companies that are looking to get into the space, is take the view of the P&L and what will work for the teams. Yes, we need to deliver for the fans as well, and it has to make sense for the company to implement. So I think the sponsorship space is a big one. The broadcast rights fees, those are of course negotiated on longer timelines, some with RSNs locally, and then some with the league on another long-term basis. And then you have ticketing, of course, and then retail, merchandise, concessions. There are a lot of opportunities on that side to increase ease of transactions. If you've been to a game and you think about standing in line waiting to buy your food, and you only have the X number of minutes before the next period, the next half, the next quarter, the more seamless you're able to make that experience, the more people you're able to get through the line, the less people you have who walk out their section, they look over and they say, that's too long, I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to get the food that I wanted. And again, each one of those transactions will drive the bottom line impact for the business.
Really great insight. So Brennon, hearing that, what are some of the, because you talked about it, right? Text messaging, it is a communication platform, right? And the ease and simplicity of it. What are some of the other P&L impacting use cases you've heard from other teams and sports organizations?
Yeah, it's funny because when we engaged with our first team, right? And we went to them telling them, hey, look, this is what we do. And we were so focused on seat upgrades. And in that same conversation, they were so focused on concessions and this big problem that they have with lineups. And we're like, oh, okay, that's interesting. That was going to be our next thing we were going to attack, but I guess it's our first now. But it was kind of like they tell you their problems, right? And we were turned around because to them, like maybe seating wasn't a big issue, and it was more this huge problem around concessions. And so it just kind of like made us think in a completely different way that, and it actually also helped us build out what we now concentrate on in this menu of solutions that we now offer. But it was really understanding that, look, different teams have different problems, different venues have different things they need to solve, and just be versatile to know that it may not be the thing that you came to the table with, but it's something you have to be open to solving that they need right now. And then later down the road, you can go back to what your initial offering was and then solve that. But be open, learn to connect the dots, adapt to the changes. And yes, absolutely. If the client says, we'd like to do this first, jump on it. You'll figure it out because obviously they're connecting the dots. It's just a matter of time till everybody's on the same page and you solve their problem.
So we do have a great question that came in from Eduardo Torres. And his question, which I can kind of speak to and you guys can add color to, which is, throughout the program, did you have an official mentor? And so when we were building SportsTech, because we knew we needed to have a value proposition for the founders, but we also equally so needed a value proposition for the sports partners on board. And so we have obviously our owned assets, but we brought in NASCAR, we brought in 3 Olympic teams. They all share a lot of the similarities in terms of problems we're solving with technology that really framed up our 8 strategic investment areas. But throughout the selections process, throughout innovation discovery sessions, we stayed really close to every single one of the sports partners and what their innovation needs and priorities are. So that when we went through the selections process and we were interviewing and welcoming you in to the room on Zoom, Brennon, and asked you all the tough questions and really pushed and probed what's unique, what's differentiated, do you have defensibility here and there, and have you thought about this? Was a chance for us to see people who naturally came forward, like Sam, to say, there's something here of value for our business, and I'm willing to put in the time to work with them. So we had a sports partner advisor from each of our sports partners assigned with each of the startup teams. But then we also pulled in external subject matter experts. So startup founders who have been there, done that, successfully sold their company, have a lot of the battle wounds and the awards that come along the way of that entrepreneurial journey that could add to that. And then there was also mentor matching in the third, which is really more about you discover throughout the program, Brennon, you assume coming in, we got this part of it nailed down. And then you realize, oh, actually, we need a little bit more guidance around legal documentation and scoping out a POC or something of that nature. And then we could really bring in some ad hoc subject matter experts as mentors. So that gives a sense of what that experience was like. But Brennon, from your perspective, how did that work out?
Okay, so it's funny. You come into this world and I'll tell you, nothing's nailed down. Everything is up in the air and it's up to you to figure out how to build a path forward. So obviously it was kind of weird because the sports world is not just ticketing. There's so many other aspects to it. And it was, I think the different mentors that we engaged with, it was cool to see how varied they were. I mean, entertainment, some dealt with just concerts, some dealt with signage, or some were the telecom providers. And I remember reaching out and having these conversations with them because it was all applicable to us. And it was just, and it was cool to know that we had like this domain expertise in any one of these areas that we could just tap into. And it was almost like, obviously you start to gravitate to the ones that are more your daily, right? But you do need this network. You do need to tap into it, because when you get insights from all these mentors and how they would deal with a situation coming from their own path, it just helps you along the way, and it gives you all this knowledge that you would have never thought you needed, but somehow you just, once again, start to connect the dots, and it makes your path a little bit easier. But yeah, definitely lean on those mentors. That's what they're there for.
Excellent. So you took on 2 teams. Hopefully you'll be a sports partner advisor again to the next class, and we're in the midst of the selection process there. But what were some of the elements of the program purely from a sports partner perspective that you gained value out of that you didn't necessarily think that you would?
I mean, I think one of the first things is the exposure to people solving different problems and minds coming into the space trying to say, hey, I've got something new, I've got something different, and getting to have those conversations both with the 2 companies we worked with directly as partners, but with everybody else who came to us through office hours, through shared sessions with the other partner companies. And then in addition to talking to the companies directly, talking to the other partners and saying, hey, we're working on solving the same problem. Let's think about how we can talk and think about our best practices and how these companies could jointly fit some of our needs. So really looking at all of the different connections and ideas that we can bring out of this, and saying that there are never too many good ideas that you can bring to the table and start thinking about, and then see what that spurs. You can have, I think as Brennan says as well, you have someone come to you with one idea, and it kind of creates this little spark of a thought of something else. And you say, hey, that was really cool here, and let me think about another way that could apply, and another thing that we could do that will drive our business forward. So I think from my perspective, from my team's perspective, being able to sit with people and dedicate time specifically to thinking about what are the new innovations that we need, what are the biggest challenges we're trying to face, and how are people who are trying to build companies to address these problems thinking about them. There's just so much value to all of those conversations.
One of the things I always appreciated was how much similarity in terms of problems worth solving across the partners too. I mean, you share a lot of the same challenges just from a venue and event standpoint that NASCAR does when they have these huge properties and those types of things, which was another connection, Brennan, that talk about a different and unique world. And you got to spend time in Daytona with some of the senior leadership there. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah. Okay. So one crazy experience is happened last weekend. We were at the Daytona 400. It was the Coke Zero 400. And just when you think you've seen everything, you go to a NASCAR event and that's when your eyes get opened as to, oh, here's another thing we haven't even thought about, even though it's right there in front of you. Anyways, needless to say, our service. So NASCAR, they invited us down to be part of the technology program, and to really just see to get an insider's view of what is how much tech is actually involved at a NASCAR race and event, and mind blown to say the least. But it's also, how do you take that and you have this offering, and how do you make it work? And I think that's one of the keys here. It's okay, even if NASCAR was to see an offering and be like, hey, that's pretty cool. How do you make it work? How do you make it connect? We saw a whole bunch of ways we could offer them things, but how does it work at a Daytona track with 100,000 people in the stands and the pits passes, and there's just so much involved. And I think seeing it from the inside out opened our minds, and absolutely, we're going to be engaging with them with a whole slew of proposals very, very soon. But I think, yeah, it's so cool to like be a part of like something that big and realize, wow, you can address a lot of these issues that we see or we can improve. And definitely looking forward to those next conversations with NASCAR and having those trials there.
Well, I've been to a number of NASCAR races. They've been a fantastic partner with us for years. And it is, to your point, it is truly an event that can start even before the races start with people camping, and it's a huge property, and there are people that are doing activations there, and there's tons of merchandise and food, and you can do, get on the simulators and see what it might feel like to be, pretend you're in a car that moves that quickly around, and just the access that you get to the cars, to the athletes, all of those things. But there is, to your point, it's a huge communication piece of what are those opportunities over that entire weekend that you've invested your time to spend there, just to make sure you're not missing any of the good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's quite interesting. I suggest everybody go attend a NASCAR race and take your plugs, because you'll need them.
Exactly. So another one came in from Roland. So this is a little tough question. It was, what was your favorite partner / founder memory between you two? So you don't have to pick favorites, but if you could share, each of you share a specific moment, maybe it was an aha just in working together. Brennan, maybe I can toss it to you first.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think with me, it was, so Sam and Ika, they were the two people that we connected with. And for us, it was a big learning kind of like experience, but there's also like a trust level, right? I mean, in the end of the day, like you said, like Sam did open up his Rolodex to Spectre Venue Management. To me, that was a big moment, because it's like, wow, somebody believes in us enough, even though due to the environment cannot maybe facilitate right now, right here, but they're actually giving us the connection to somebody that's just as important in another way. And to me, it was like, that's when things get real, because look at the trust level that makes something like that happen. So I don't know, that's a moment I remember, because I was like, wow, we're still moving ahead. This is not a roadblock in any way. We're still, and we're going to come back, and we're going to have that conversation with Sam again when the time is right. But that was my moment. That's one I remember.
I think that one stands out to me as well. I think one other that I really enjoyed is we brought in our ticket operations team that works on the back end of our ticketing system and said, all right, let's sit down and get into the weeds. Like, let's get our hands dirty. Let's walk everybody through what would this look like? Because when we're talking to some companies out there that are pitching us stuff, we say, all right, we have to take the step back and say, well, will this really work with how we have everything set up? Of course, we like to think we've set things up in a really cool, unique, interesting way that's specific to all of our different lines of business. And how can we make sure that the tech is set up to work with us in the way we want it to? And we were able to take Brennan and team in and say, all right, let's kind of pull back the curtain on all of that and co-develop and look at this together and say, how do we make sure that what Brennan is doing is going to work with what we have on the back end, and he knows enough about what we have on the back end that he can make sure when he comes back and when he goes out to us or to other teams, that he can confidently say, these are the things you're going to ask me, and these are the technical nitty-gritty questions that we're going to have to get through at some point. And I can tell you with confidence that we can get that done.
So I'd love, and Brennan, you mentioned it too, just the cohort and the chemistry that happens within there. Would love to just spend a little time on Sonar, which was the other company that you had an opportunity to work with. So using ultrasonic technology, again, to in a venue that maybe doesn't have stable internet, just a different way to unlock experiences using Sonar technology. Can you talk a little bit, because you were able to do some active pilots during the Flyer season?
Yeah, I think they're a company that came in with a really cool technological solution. They had actually been successful outside of the sports world beforehand, working in, I think, prisons to start, address the problem of thick concrete walls are tough to penetrate. And so we can do this in sports venues as well. And we were able to run some tests working with them in our arena, working with our broadcast partner at NBC Sports Philadelphia. And I think there's a really interesting way to say, hey, we can work with you to get you that personalized content. So coming back to one of the problems I talked about earlier in this conversation, it comes back to, how am I pushing you what you want at the right time? So whether it's when you walk into the building, whether it's after a goal, whether it's at a certain specific moment in the game, being able to have the flexibility and using sound to do it, where it's simple as open an app and press a button. There's just that opportunity to really deliver something different for our fans that they haven't necessarily seen before. So it's really exciting to work with them, and again, similarly see the development of their offering as they were able to test out different concepts, different activations of what this technology can do. Excellent.
Yeah, I remember for them in choosing them, to your point, amazing technology, but where do you focus them? And now they are moving on to doing a pilot at the NBC sports level to insert that tone at the broadcast level, and then open up experiences and direct lines of communication with the fans sitting there in the 10-foot living room experience. Do you see, in terms of that fan experience, Sam, a way where you equally can engage fans that are watching in their home so that they feel like they're there and want to be there?
Yeah. I think that is absolutely the future. I mean, for me, we running, controlling the arena, we can talk to the people who are in the building with us every day, and being able to reach that fan, whether they're in Philadelphia, but not in the venue, or they're around the country. We know we've got Flyers fans across North America, around the world, and say, we can make you feel as much a part of the experience as if you were sitting here in the venue, and really continuing to foster those connections, continuing to build the connection with the team, continue to move people from a casual fan who just kind of stumbles across hockey for the first time to your lifetime Flyers fanatic who is staying with us, who is buying tickets, who's coming to every game, who can tell you about their favorite team from when they were 5 years old and they're now 65. And those are the conversations we have with Fanstay, and being able to expand that reach, I think is really promising, and something that we look forward to continuing to work on.
Yeah, it's an interesting how you marry those two worlds. And Brennon, you're certainly, when you're in the venue, making that experience so amazing that you want to keep going back again and again. Would love, Brennon, from your perspective, what were some of the close connections within the cohort that you developed, and did you find ways to work together with some of the other founders?
Yeah, it's I think definitely the Sonar company was another one. They okay, so there was a few actually. I think I connected with everybody, to be honest. But it's so let's talk about XIQ. Okay, totally different company with a service that helps with ignitions for golf carts and things like that, just for context. And we used to talk on once again 2 different businesses, just talking about our daily problems. A lot of them similar. They were further along than us because they were an actual product, but for me, it was also, he had the same challenges. He was trying to enter a market that was hard to get into. And it took and it's not just like, hey, we have a product. It's about convincing them how to use it in their environment. And even though completely different product, completely different offering, there were a lot of similarities because of this ecosystem. And we bounced a lot of ideas about, we just talk on the random evenings just about like our latest problem. And I think that was one of the big benefits of the cohort, because you go through this together, you're with other people through this. And then you lean on, all this advice that they start to absorb. And I think that's one of the big benefits. Like, they're along with you for the ride, and you build these connections, and you just learn to see other perspectives of solving problems that are actually pretty close to yours. And that was one of the huge benefits. So yeah, definitely Carlos at XIQ, that's a shout out for him right now, because we did connect pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was, I think, a epiphany moment for him as well, that so yeah, to build off and give context, they have created this hardware device that replaces that traditional ignition key in non-automotive vehicles. So it's even boats. They're now in water as well. So golf carts, manufacturing equipment, boats, and those types of things. Well, you look at any venue, you look at NASCAR in particular, there are a lot of golf carts just being used in the operations of those. And to suddenly replace what is a universal key with an actual pin and an activation via your mobile device to use that, then you suddenly have an IoT platform, you know where your device is, you know who's on it, you know how to communicate to them as well. And for him, it was very much, we kept trying to see, well, how does we own Golf Now, which is the largest tee time booking platform out there. And how could we help make a more seamless experience when you've booked your tee time, have a cart waiting for you, have the pin as you walk up to it, it recognizes your device and you're out on the golf course quickly. But the tension was, and it goes back to your earlier point, Brennan, of there's an app for that, but who wants to keep downloading all of these different apps? And so at the end of the day, it was like, how do you keep that experience within the Golf Now platform? And then text messaging becomes a very seamless way to do that. So it was neat to see the cross synergy of ideas that happened within the cohort and the multiple pilots and proof of concepts that our teams accomplished in that 12 weeks alone, but even past there, we're up to, I think, 90 pilots and proof of concepts because of the strategic fit. So, well, I really want to thank you both because I think you did a fantastic job of really talking about how and giving tangible examples for how we can bring meaningful change together in sports and for Comcast as a whole. The more we can work with startups that keep that entrepreneurial spirit and culture alive and force us to challenge the status quo, that keeps us sharp when we're a large company to react to the changing dynamics that we're handed to every day. So thank you both for sharing so many insightful memories along this journey and Sam for being a fantastic sports partner in this whole process. Absolutely.
It was great. It was fun talking about all this. Reliving all those memories. It was great.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. A rigorous 12 weeks and you made it through.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate it again.
All right, guys.